Hey everyone, Nigel and Luke here, and welcome to Crime Zone. If you're a regular viewer of our Crimes of the Week series, you might remember that a little earlier this year, we released a couple of compilations of some of the dumbest criminals in crime stories that we'd covered so far this year. Because so many of you told us that you enjoyed these compilations, we promised that we'd make the videos quarterly so that we could include as many of these bizarre and entertaining stories as possible. Well, we're happy to report that it's that time again, and we're here with our fourth and final installment of the year. Be sure to look out for another one of these videos near the end of the week that will be covering cases exclusively from our Crimes of the Week International series. One thing to keep in mind is that these segments have not been edited since they appeared in their respective lists, so references to specific days of the week as well as other small details may no longer apply. Also, if you enjoy these compilation lists, let us know in the comments section below, and we'll consider continuing with these quarterly videos next year. With that out of the way, let's get to the video. As a fugitive from the law, you would think that your top, and perhaps only priority, would be avoiding the police. Well, apparently, that's precisely the opposite of what one wanted Pennsylvania woman did this week, when she walked right into a New Jersey sheriff's office and asked for a job. According to reports, the situation began recently when the Hudson County Sheriff's Office in Jersey City was looking to hire a new security guard. While looking through applications and doing their usual background checks, one candidate quickly stood out: 27-year-old Zaima Johnson. Unfortunately for her, it wasn't because of her stellar qualifications. It was because she was wanted on fraud charges in Monroe County, Pennsylvania, and had an additional 10 bench warrants for failure to appear in court. On October 4th, Johnson was invited into the sheriff's office under the guise of a job interview, and when she showed up, was promptly taken into custody. Things quickly got even worse for the 27-year-old when she was also found to be in possession of 2 stolen credit cards at the time of her arrest. Johnson has now been charged with credit card theft, and at the time of this recording, is currently awaiting extradition to Pennsylvania. Authorities in Tulsa, Oklahoma say that they were recently able to arrest and charge an alleged serial burglar, one whose identity was given away thanks to his affinity for a beloved Nickelodeon character. According to reports, the incident began back near the end of July when police received a call about a burglary at the Waterside Apartments in West Tulsa. 4 other burglaries would be reported at the apartment complex in the following weeks, each with a similar MO. The suspect would kick down the door and would steal mostly electronics such as phones and televisions, as well as guns. A couple of the victims even managed to catch a glimpse of the perpetrator. What they remembered most was that he was wearing a pair of shorts and socks that had the cartoon character SpongeBob SquarePants on them. It turned out that this bizarre calling card would eventually be what sunk the serial burglar, when authorities came across Facebook Marketplace listings featuring some of the stolen items. Included in the background of several of the photos were the same articles of SpongeBob-themed clothing. Police were able to trace the account selling the items back to a man named Edward Price, who apparently also goes by the name Smackman online. Sure enough, when authorities searched Price's apartment on September 16th, they found a number of the stolen items inside, as well as his trademark SpongeBob socks and shorts in the dryer. Price was arrested for second-degree burglary after a felony conviction, knowingly concealing stolen property, and possession of a firearm in the commission of a felony. Apparently, this is far from Smackman's first burglary arrest. However, in the past, police say that many of the charges against him have been dismissed because of witnesses failing to appear in court. They also say that many of the stolen items from this recent string of burglaries have now been returned to their rightful owners. When announcing Price's arrest on their Facebook page, it seems that Tulsa police couldn't help but take one last parting shot at his expense. While speaking about recovering the stolen property, they said, quote, "FYI, the suspect's apartment was not located in a pineapple under the sea." Representatives from Florida's Nassau County Sheriff's Office say that 2 men are facing attempted murder charges this week after they were allegedly involved in a violent road rage incident, which ended with both of them shooting each other's young daughters. According to reports, the incident began sometime on October 8th, when police received a 911 call about 2 men driving erratically on Highway 1 near the town of Callahan. The caller stated that it looked like the drivers were involved in some kind of dangerous, quote, cat and mouse chase, and were repeatedly braking in front of each other and trying to run each other off the road. Not long after, police reportedly received 2 more 911 calls, this time from the drivers' wives. The women each eventually agreed to get their husbands to pull over so that they could speak with a deputy. When officers arrived at the scene, they allegedly found the 2 men in question, 43-year-old Frank Allison and 35-year-old William Joseph Hale, fighting at the side of the road. They also discovered that both of the men's daughters, ages 14 and 5, were suffering from gunshot wounds. The 5-year-old had reportedly been shot in the right leg, while the 14-year-old had been shot in the back, leaving her with a collapsed lung. After breaking the 2 fathers up, police began questioning them about what had led to the violent altercation. Both allegedly claimed that it was the other's fault, and that they were simply trying to de-escalate the situation. Though it's unclear what actually started the road rage incident, police allege that as the men were trying to run each other off the road, things escalated when Hale pulled his Dodge pickup truck alongside Allison's Nissan SUV to shout at him. While Hale was shouting, Allison's wife allegedly flipped him the bird, and in response, someone in Hale's vehicle threw a water bottle, which apparently hit her. In retaliation for this, Allison pulled out a handgun and fired a shot at Hale's vehicle, which hit his 5-year-old daughter in the leg. While speaking to police, Allison claimed that he fired the shot, quote, to get out of the situation. According to Hale, he initially didn't realize what had happened. However, as soon as he noticed his daughter was injured, he whipped out a gun of his own and sped up. He then proceeded to empty his clip while firing at Allison's vehicle, with one of the rounds going through the back and hitting his 14-year-old daughter. Both of the injured girls were rushed to the hospital after police arrived and are reportedly expected to make full recoveries. Needless to say, both of their fathers were arrested at the scene and have now been charged with attempted second-degree murder. Speaking about the incident at a press conference this week, Nassau County Sheriff Bill Leeper lambasted both of the fathers' incredibly reckless actions, saying, quote, there could have been 2 dead kids because of 2 stupid grown men. At the time of this recording, Hale and Allison have reportedly both been released on a $150,000 bond. Authorities in Pinellas County, Florida say that a hapless thief is in custody this week after he resorted to using a literal handgun to hold up a local bank. According to reports, the incident took place at around 1:25 p.m. on October 10th, when 56-year-old Paul James Sinclair walked into a Chase Bank branch in the city of Seminole. After approaching one of the tellers, he held his hand in the shape of a gun, stuck it underneath his shirt, and demanded that she hand over cash. Surprisingly, this tactic was actually somewhat successful, and the teller handed Sinclair $120 before sending him on his way. Unfortunately for the 56-year-old, his triumph was extremely short-lived, as police caught up to him just 11 minutes later. Thankfully, he didn't try to go out finger guns blazing, and was easily taken into custody and is now facing robbery charges. Reports jokingly state that no weapons or fingers were seized from Sinclair at the time of his arrest, which, if nothing else, means that he still ended up better off than this week's alleged home invader from North Carolina. He is currently being held in the county jail in lieu of a $10,000 bond. Authorities in Brevard County, Florida say that a 29-year-old mother is facing multiple charges this week after she allegedly had a total meltdown outside of her child's school. At one point, threatening to blow it up. According to reports, the situation began sometime on October 5th, when 29-year-old Tiffany Marie Perazzi allegedly began to cause a disturbance while waiting to pick up her child outside their school in the city of Melbourne. At first, she was issued a traffic citation. However, things started to escalate when she reportedly freaked out about the citation and was issued a second ticket, this time a warning for trespassing. She was then told by a school resource officer that she would have to leave the property and make other arrangements to pick her child up from school. The news reportedly sent Perazzi into a full-blown rage, causing her to throw the trespass warning out of her car window. She then proceeded to call the school principal, threatening to, quote, punch and beat her butt if she didn't fix the situation. When this proved futile, Perazzi upped the ante once again, calling 911. While on the phone with dispatchers, she reportedly stated, quote, I need someone to meet me at the school, and if someone don't help me get my child, I will blow this bitch up. Predictably, these threats only dug Perazzi further into a hole, sending her child's school into lockdown and causing her to be arrested by police when officers arrived to investigate the situation. She has now been charged with falsely reporting a bomb, fleeing and eluding police, disturbing a school function, and operating a vehicle without a valid license. Speaking about Perazzi's actions after the incident, Brevard County Sheriff Wayne Ivey stated that he and his department would not tolerate any threats on school campuses. He also jokingly stated that he didn't expect Perazzi to be nominated for any Mother of the Year awards at her child's school.
Representatives from the NYPD say that a 49-year-old man is facing charges this week after he allegedly set a local Bangladeshi restaurant on fire because he was unhappy with his food order. According to reports, the situation began at around 6 a.m. on October 2nd when police and firefighters were called to the scene of a blaze at Itati Garden and Grill in Jackson Heights. Thankfully, the fire was put out before the building was totally engulfed in flames, but the restaurant's windows had still been shattered and its air conditioning unit had been destroyed. It was estimated that more than $1,500 in repairs would be needed. The restaurant's owner was dealt another devastating blow when he learned that the situation had been no accident. Thanks to surveillance video taken from outside the business, it was quickly revealed that the fire had been deliberately started by an unknown man. In the footage, the suspect could be seen walking up to the restaurant before dumping a bucket full of flammable liquid through its security shutters and onto the entranceway. After fumbling around for a few seconds, he bent down extremely close to the liquid and ignited it, clearly not realizing how dangerous this was. Almost immediately, the area erupted into a fireball, causing the entrance to the restaurant as well as the suspect's shoes to burst into flames. The suspect could then be seen running from the scene while simultaneously trying to put his shoes out. Thanks to this footage and the combined efforts of the NYPD and the city's fire department, the unknown arson suspect was soon identified as 49-year-old Shopal Norbu. It turned out that Norbu was a disgruntled customer who had been at the restaurant just hours before allegedly setting the fire. Following his arrest, Norbu told police that on the night in question he had ordered some chicken biryani from the restaurant, but they had given him something else. In a rage, he had yelled at staff and thrown the food out before apparently deciding that a proportional response would be to buy a container of gasoline and try to burn the restaurant to the ground. Though this will likely come as no surprise, it's said that Norbu also admitted to police that he had been drunk at the time. For their part, staff at the restaurant reportedly said that they remembered Norbu and his little outburst. However, they claim that they gave the 49-year-old exactly what he asked for, and they were confused by his reaction. At least one staff member also said that Norbu had thrown the food at employees during his temper tantrum, not in the garbage, as he told police. According to reports, Norbu was arrested on October 14th and has now been charged with felony arson and criminal mischief. He is currently free on supervised release until his next court date.
Authorities in Coweta County, Georgia say that an alleged criminal group's dreams of becoming the biggest theft ring around came crashing down this week after one of the gang gave the whole operation away thanks to his sweet tooth. According to reports, the situation began recently when the Coweta County Sheriff's Office started receiving calls about a number of burglaries in a specific area of the county. Cars and homes were being broken into, with the thieves making off with firearms, food, and other items. In some cases, the culprits were even showering in the victims' homes during the crimes. Thanks to a combined effort with their law enforcement counterparts in neighboring Heard County, investigators were able to conclude that the burglaries were linked. It seemed that the suspects were using trails in the woods surrounding the crime scenes not only to transport their stolen goods, but also to hide them. Still, the identities of the thieves remained a mystery. Well, that was, until one of them allegedly made a critical mistake. According to reports, after the most recent home burglary, the victim informed police that, among other things, the suspects had stolen a package of fun-size Milky Way bars. Much to the surprise of police, a trail of wrappers from these same chocolates was soon found on one of the paths used by the thieves. It led directly to one of their houses. There, police arrested the alleged sweet-tooth burglar, now identified as a man named Gerald Bennett. Not long after, authorities say that they rounded up at least 7 of Bennett's other accomplices, one of whom is said to be a minor. Apparently, the group had previously bragged amongst themselves about their success in committing crimes, saying that they wanted to be one of the biggest theft rings around. Following the arrests, police gave kudos to the final victims' attention to detail, saying that if they hadn't tipped them off about the Milky Way bars, investigators might simply have written off the wrappers as nothing more than trash on the ground.
Authorities in Fayetteville, North Carolina say that they've arrested a bumbling criminal this week after he allegedly tried to hold up 2 different banks with notes written on the back of his pay stubs. According to reports, the incident began at around 11 a.m. on November 1st when police in the city of Fairmont responded to a holdup alarm at the Lumbee Guarantee Bank on North Walnut Street. When officers arrived at the scene, employees at the bank explained that a middle-aged man had tried to rob the place by handing a teller a note demanding cash in the drive-through lane. When the teller refused, the man drove away empty-handed, but left behind his note. It turned out that he wasn't hard to identify, though. The suspect had allegedly written the hold-up note on the back of his own pay stub. Police quickly named the suspect as 43-year-old Dennis Wayne Price, Jr. That wasn't all, though. When authorities looked up Price's information, they discovered that he was wanted for a recent vehicle theft. The stolen vehicle matched the description of the gray Toyota that he had been seen driving at the attempted bank robbery. As if things couldn't get more ridiculous, police were soon notified about a second bank robbery, this time in the city of Fayetteville. Price allegedly committed this crime in almost the exact same way, though this time managed to make off with an undisclosed amount of cash. Unfortunately for the 43-year-old, his success was extremely short-lived, as he was allegedly spotted by North Carolina Highway Patrol later that day driving the stolen Toyota. He reportedly tried to flee back to Fairmont, though was eventually pulled over and arrested. At the time of this recording, Price is now facing a number of charges, including attempted common-law robbery, possession of a stolen vehicle, fleeing and eluding, and driving while intoxicated. However, authorities say that more charges are expected to follow.
Authorities in Marion County, Florida say that they recently dealt with quite the bizarre and dangerous traffic stop recently when they pulled over a man with serious damage to his vehicle, only for him to blame it on some sort of curse before threatening and attacking police officers. According to reports, the incident began at around 4 a.m. on October 23rd, when officers from the Marion County Sheriff's Office noticed a suspicious vehicle traveling on a northbound on-ramp of the I-75 near the community of Marion Oaks. The car's hazard lights were on, and it was tilted to one side, appearing like both of the tires on the driver's side were deflated. However, when police conducted a traffic stop and got a closer look, they realized that the tires were not simply deflated. They were completely ripped to shreds, and the man behind the wheel was driving on what remained of the rims. When questioned about the bizarre situation, the driver, later identified as 29-year-old Andres Orjuela Montalegre, offered a strange and nonsensical explanation. He claimed that someone had placed a curse on him and that he had hit a curb too hard. He reportedly went on to say that this left him with a, quote, do-or-die choice: drive home without tires, or set his car on fire and sleep on the median of the highway. I mean, come on, we've all been there before, right? Anyway, According to police, things started to make a little more sense when they asked Montalegre to step out of his vehicle and noticed that he was very unsteady on his feet. They suspected that he was driving under the influence. Much to the chagrin of the officers, the 29-year-old was apparently intent on sticking to his initial story, though. He repeated his claims that someone had put a curse on him before saying that the damage to his car was the result of, quote, paranormal activity. He then began to threaten the officers, telling one of them, quote, if you mess with me right now, let me tell you something. I'm going to break your head with a baseball bat. He then allegedly told the same officer that he was going to skin him alive. As you might imagine, this made performing roadside sobriety tests quite difficult. In fact, police reportedly had to abandon this effort altogether when Montalegre allegedly spat on two of them, then grabbed for one of their tasers while they were wiping the saliva off. Needless to say, this was the point at which he was arrested, though apparently not before kicking multiple officers while being carried to the back of a patrol car. Montalegre reportedly refused to cooperate once again after being taken to jail, and was subsequently charged with 2 counts of battery on a law enforcement officer, resisting an officer with violence, attempt to deprive an officer of means of protection or communication, corrupt by threats against a public servant, and of course, driving under the influence. Montalegre is currently being held on $27,000 bond, and if convicted on all of the charges, reportedly faces up to 25.5 years in prison. Authorities in Cherokee County, Georgia say that a local teenager has landed himself in hot water this week after he allegedly tried to get out of an armed robbery halfway through by pretending the whole thing was a joke. According to reports, the incident began at around 9:30 p.m. on November 3rd when 18-year-old Brandon McMahon walked into the Smoke Stars vape shop in the city of Canton. He was dressed in all black, wearing sunglasses and a mask, and was holding what appeared to be a handgun. After raising the weapon and pointing it at the clerk, he demanded that they hand over a number of products which he mentioned by name. Then, the whole thing took a bizarre turn. After abruptly bursting into laughter, McMahon allegedly removed his sunglasses and mask and told the clerk that the whole thing was a joke for his YouTube channel. He then explained to the terrified employee that he had, quote, got him, and that his weapon was, quote, just a freaking airsoft gun. The clerk replied that they didn't think the so-called prank was very funny. Police, however, took it a step further. When they saw the footage of the incident after McMahon fled, they didn't buy his, yo bro, it was just a joke, excuse. In fact, they didn't think it was actually a prank at all. Instead, they now allege that the teenager did intend to rob the vape store, but simply got cold feet midway through. And we have to admit, they've got a point. After all, if McMahon was doing it for YouTube, why was he alone? Even more confusing, who was filming him? And perhaps most importantly, why didn't he have an actual YouTube channel? These are just some of the questions that police say they have for McMahon, aside from, why he would do something so stupid and dangerous. In any case, McMahon was identified thanks to the vape store's surveillance cameras, and he was quickly tracked down. Despite claiming that he used an airsoft gun during the alleged robbery, police say that during a search of the teen's home, they found a .357 Magnum that they believe was actually used in the crime. McMahon was promptly arrested and has now been charged with criminal attempt to commit armed robbery. Authorities in San Bernardino County, California say that a wanted murder suspect is finally in custody this week after he was allegedly caught by chance during a brazen robbery at a grocery store. According to reports, the incident began sometime late on the night of November 7th when a police officer in the city of Verne saw something suspicious while out on patrol. It was a man who appeared to be running from a Vaughn's grocery store with a shopping cart full of Tide laundry detergent. The officer quickly caught up with the man, who was also being chased by the store's manager. The manager confirmed that the more than 20 large bottles of detergent had been stolen from the store. However, The officer soon learned that that wasn't all. When he ran the suspect's information, he learned that the man also had a $2 million warrant out for his arrest for a murder case in San Bernardino County. While the suspect's name has not been released at the time of this recording, according to local news reports, he is one of 3 people charged in connection with the November 29 shooting of 16-year-old Ulysses Solis and his brother, 21-year-old Fabian Solis. Both men were reportedly hit by gunfire during the shooting, though only Ulysses died. The case remained cold until new evidence was discovered just a few months ago, resulting in arrest warrants for the 3 suspects being issued in September. 2 of them were arrested last month. However, until now, this week's suspect had remained on the run. According to reports, the alleged detergent thief has now pleaded not guilty to murder and discharging a firearm causing great bodily injury. He is currently being held at West Valley Detention Center in Rancho Cucamonga in lieu of $1 million bail. Authorities in Bellevue, Washington say that a 17-year-old alleged thief recently got quite the dose of instant karma when he accidentally knocked himself out during the middle of a brazen daylight robbery. While reports about the incident only began to circulate last week, multiple sources claim that it actually took place sometime this past August at a Louis Vuitton store in downtown Bellevue. It allegedly began when the 17-year-old suspect and 2 female accomplices walked into the high-end retailer and started looking around. Suddenly, the 17-year-old allegedly grabbed a number of designer handbags worth a reported $18,000 and began to sprint for the entrance. Unfortunately for the suspect, he would soon learn a lesson all too familiar to countless species of birds across the planet. Never underestimate the humble plate glass door. Upon running into one of the entrance doors head first, the teen was apparently knocked out cold, giving store security enough time to place him under arrest and recover the stolen merchandise. While the commotion also provided an opening for the 17-year-old's 2 alleged accomplices to escape without being caught, it seems like police have since at least identified them. All 3 are said to be members of the same retail theft gang that have allegedly hit this same Louis Vuitton store multiple times before. As for the 17-year-old, though it's safe to say that he was taken into custody following the incident, what happened to him from there is unclear. Because he's a juvenile, his name has not been released, and no other information was provided about possible charges against him. Authorities in Salt Lake County, Utah say that a 29-year-old driver is facing charges this week after an alleged road rage incident in which he stupidly pointed a gun at another motorist who turned out to be a cop. According to reports, the incident took place at around 11:45 a.m. on November 14th, when the suspect, later identified as 29-year-old Taylor Ray Bradley, was driving down 5600 West in the Salt Lake City suburb of West Valley City. Things were apparently normal until a truck that was traveling in front of Bradley signaled to change lanes as they approached 4100 South. While it's unclear why, this simple lane change reportedly sent the 29-year-old into a full-blown rage, and after the truck made its turn, he followed. Bradley allegedly then proceeded to tailgate the other vehicle before changing lanes himself and racing up so that he was parallel to the truck. He then began to yell profanities at the other driver before pulling out and pointing what appeared to be a small silver firearm at him. Unfortunately for Bradley, as soon as he was finished with his alleged tantrum and attempted to speed off, the other driver turned on blue lights inside his truck and motioned for him to pull over. It turned out that the vehicle was an unmarked cop car, and the driver was a police officer with the local Granite School District. According to the officer, even though Bradley was caught pretty well red-handed, he still tried to lie about the handgun, which was soon found wedged into the cushion of the front passenger seat. In a subsequent report, the officer referred to Bradley as, quote, an individual who could potentially put the public and other motor vehicle operators at risk for road rage incidents. The 29-year-old was arrested at the scene and was booked into the Salt Lake County Jail for aggravated assault and threatening to use a weapon in a fight.
Authorities in Houston, Texas say that a 25-year-old man suffered a fate far worse than jail time this week after a reckless and illegal stunt in the middle of a busy highway resulted in his death. According to reports, the incident took place at around 11:35 a.m. on November 10th when motorists traveling south on the Oct-Dec freeway began to notice something strange. It was a man who had somehow climbed onto the top of a moving 18-wheeler who appeared to be dancing on the vehicle's trailer. The man allegedly continued his antics for some time and also may have been recording himself at the same time. At one point, he was even witnessed ducking down as the truck traveled underneath an overpass, only to immediately get back up and start dancing again. Unfortunately for the man, his luck apparently ran out shortly thereafter when the truck approached another bridge at Tuam Street. Instead of crouching this time, he reportedly messed up and was knocked off the truck, sending him falling down into oncoming traffic. The man was rushed to the hospital but was later pronounced dead of multiple blunt force injuries. So far, his name has not yet been released publicly. As far as how the 25-year-old managed to get onto the 18-wheeler in the first place, currently that remains a bit of a mystery. The driver of the vehicle was reportedly questioned by police after the incident and was found not to be impaired. He claimed he had no idea how the man managed to climb onto the truck and furthermore had no idea he was there. Police say that the two men also did not know each other prior to the incident. Representatives from the NYPD say that 5 alleged carjackers are in custody this week after they held up a driver at gunpoint and stole his vehicle, only to completely bungle their escape. According to reports, the incident took place at around 1:30 a.m. on November 22nd when the 5 suspects ambushed the 39-year-old driver near 164th Street and Chapin Parkway in Queens Jamaica Hills neighborhood. After pointing a gun at the victim, the assailants forced him to hand over his cell phone and his black BMW X5. After the 39-year-old did as they said, the group of suspects reportedly split up, with some of them getting into the BMW and others getting into a nearby Mercedes. All of them then fled the scene. Unfortunately for the carjackers, their getaway wasn't quite as smooth as they had intended. When police caught up with them a short time later, they tried to avoid capture, but ended up crashing the 2 vehicles into each other in the process. 3 of the 5 suspects were arrested at the scene, while the remaining 2 were apparently caught later that morning after initially escaping on foot. At the time of this recording, it appears that charges are pending in the case and none of the names of the suspects have yet been released.
Representatives from the United States Attorney's Office for the Western District of Missouri say that a 30-year-old man is looking at a hefty prison sentence after he pleaded guilty to carrying out a bizarre and ill-considered bank heist this past summer. According to reports, the incident began sometime on July 20th when 30-year-old Michael C. Lloyd walked into the West Kearny Street branch of Bank of America in the city of Springfield. After walking up to one of the tellers, he handed her a note that read, quote, "Give your money now. Don't say anything. I have a partner outside." The teller did as Lloyd asked, handing over $754 from her cash drawer. Once he had the money, Lloyd fled the scene in a black pickup truck. A few minutes later, police who were responding to the incident got a call from a man who identified himself as the boyfriend of Lloyd's roommate. The man explained that Lloyd had stolen the female roommate's pickup truck that was used in the heist and said that the 30-year-old could be found at his residence at the Lazy Acres Mobile Home Park. A short time later, he was tracked down and arrested. While the tip-off that police received from the roommate's boyfriend was certainly helpful, it turned out that it wouldn't have been necessary. You see, Lloyd hadn't exactly set himself up for success in the first place. For starters, at the time of the robbery, he was wearing an ankle monitor for a previous offense, allowing authorities to easily place him at the scene. On top of that, it turned out that the threatening note Lloyd had passed to the bank teller had been written on the back of his own birth certificate. Finally, almost immediately after fleeing the bank, Lloyd apparently got cold feet about the robbery when he saw police arriving at the scene. His solution was to throw the money he had just taken out the window along with his ID and the birth certificate he had written the note on. He then texted his female roommate and claimed that her pickup truck had been stolen and that she should listen to a police scanner for details. Following his arrest, Lloyd offered a truly bizarre explanation for his actions. He reportedly stated that he had gotten into a fight with his lover earlier that day and that he had robbed the bank to, quote, prove a point. Unfortunately, he never told police what that point was. This week, Lloyd pleaded guilty to 1 count of bank robbery in federal court. He is now facing a sentence of up to 20 years in prison and a fine of up to $250,000. Authorities in Bexar County, Texas say that a jealous 23-year-old woman is facing serious charges this week after she allegedly went into a full-blown rage over a phone call and set her boyfriend's house on fire. According to reports, the incident began at around 1:45 a.m. on November 20th, when police and firefighters were called to a home on the 16,000 block of Shepherd Road with a report about a potential arson. Thankfully, the blaze was able to be put out and no one was hurt, but it was estimated that at least $50,000 in damages had been done to the residents. The homeowner explained that he knew exactly who was to blame: a 23-year-old woman named Sinead Soto, the girlfriend of one of the residents there. The homeowner alleged that a little while earlier, Soto had called her boyfriend via FaceTime, but another woman had picked up the phone instead. This enraged her so much that she had apparently come over, broken in, and set fire to the living room couch, leaving flames to spread to the rest of the house. Before leaving, she had allegedly stolen a few items from the residence, and afterwards even went as far as to send her boyfriend a passive-aggressive text message that read, quote, "I hope your house is okay." While all of this would have been unforgivable regardless of the circumstances, what made the situation truly ridiculous was that it turned out that Soto didn't even have a reason to be jealous in the first place. According to reports, her boyfriend wasn't cheating. The woman who had picked up his phone was a female relative. Soto was arrested the following day and is now facing multiple charges, including burglary and arson.
Representatives from Florida's Osceola County Sheriff's Office say that they were left completely dumbfounded this week after a man brazenly tried to steal from a store that was packed with police officers. According to reports, the incident took place sometime recently at a Walmart location in the city of St. Cloud while the store was in the middle of holding its annual Shop with a Cop event. The event is a collaboration between the company and the Osceola County Sheriff's Office, where police officers do community outreach by shopping in the store with children for the holidays. As you might imagine, given how busy Walmart is, it's not just 1 or 2 officers that take part in the annual event. According to the Sheriff's Office, nearly 40 of their officers were present on this particular evening, not to mention others from the forensics team, community services team, and other parts of the department. However, apparently none of this was enough to deter one foolhardy alleged thief. As the Sheriff's Office explained in a recent Facebook post, a man, referred to only by the name Brad, was caught trying to steal from the store as the place was packed with their officers. He was promptly arrested and was apparently carrying a variety of items, including perfume, gloves, hedge clippers, a syringe, and a plastic baggie containing, quote, unknown contents. While we have a feeling that the unknown contents Brad was carrying might explain a fair bit about his alleged actions, in either case we agree with the Sheriff's Department, who summed up the situation in just 3 short words, quote, "Bad idea, Brad."
If you're like us, then you probably agree that being a wanted fugitive is nothing to be proud of. Even if you don't share this opinion for whatever reason, though, it seems fairly obvious just from a purely strategic standpoint that drawing attention to the fact that you're a wanted fugitive is a bad idea, especially if your goal is to, stay a wanted fugitive. Of course, like any rule, there's always the exception. Case in point, the subject of our next segment, 40-year-old Christopher Spaulding. It all started on November 28th, when representatives from Georgia's Rockdale County Sheriff's Office put out their top 10 most wanted list for the month of November. As the name suggests, the list consists of the 10 most notorious suspects that authorities in the county are currently searching for, and rotates out as new suspects emerge and old ones are arrested. While it's not a list that most normal people would understandably take much pride in making, that was not the case with Christopher Spaulding. Apparently, when he saw the list, he wanted to know why he hadn't made the cut. Naturally, he took his complaint right to the source, commenting on the post with his personal Facebook account and asking, quote, "How about me?" Not wanting to be rude, police addressed Spaulding's concern, replying, quote, "You are correct. You have 2 warrants. We are on the way." Staying true to their word, officers soon took Spaulding into custody on 2 counts of felony violation of probation. In an update on Facebook, they also thanked the fugitive for assisting in his own capture. All jokes aside, though, police took the time to reiterate that just because a suspect isn't on their top 10 most wanted list, it doesn't mean that they aren't looking for them. According to the sheriff's office, their most wanted list is simply based off of the severity of a fugitive's charges. Authorities in Phoenix, Arizona say that 2 men are lucky not to have been seriously injured or killed this week after they allegedly drove down a steep embankment and into a river bottom following a police chase. According to reports, the incident began sometime on the evening of December 6th when police in the city of Tempe were investigating a stolen car. Officers followed the 2 male occupants as they drove over the city line into Phoenix, attempting to make a traffic stop near 40th Street and University Drive. However, the driver refused to pull over and started to flee the area after hitting one of the police patrol cars. Officers reportedly chased the suspects as they headed west, but eventually made the choice to abandon the pursuit due to the men driving erratically at a high rate of speed. Despite this, police continued to patrol the area and keep an eye out for the suspects. It wasn't long before they were spotted again. This time, they weren't going anywhere though. It turned out that while trying to flee the area, the suspects had driven off of a steep embankment and were trapped in the Salt River bottom just off of Interstate 10. While it's unclear whether they had done this intentionally or accidentally, they had plunged more than 200 feet and now needed to be rescued. The operation was reportedly carried out by the Phoenix Fire Department, who had to scale 2 100-foot cliffs to get the suspects to safety. Authorities say the men were both extremely lucky, and that despite the dangerous situation, only one of the suspects needed to be taken to the hospital with minor injuries to his ribs. The men have now been identified as 24-year-old Markel Johnson and 26-year-old Kevin Turner. At the time of this recording, both men reportedly remain in custody and are facing undisclosed drug and theft charges. Authorities in Pinellas County, Florida say that a 30-year-old police officer is facing charges this week after he allegedly committed an equally gross and obnoxious crime at a local hotel bar. According to reports, the incident took place on the morning of December 5th at Jimmy B's Beach Bar, an establishment located within the Beachcomber Hotel in the city of St. Pete's Beach. It began around 12:30 a.m. when one of the employees made a trip to the ice machine to grab some ice for the bar. What he allegedly found there was equally disgusting and quite frankly annoying. 30-year-old Henry Capouch was peeing right into the part of the machine where the ice was located. Understandably, upon realizing what was happening, the employee immediately told Capouch to stop. The 30-year-old reportedly responded by swearing at the employee and then attacking him. Thankfully, a security guard who also worked for the hotel was able to intervene and apparently managed to stop Capouch, who walked back down to the beach to where his girlfriend was. When police arrived a short time later and were escorted down to the beach area, Capouch was allegedly still sitting on the beach like nothing had happened. He was apparently just as uncooperative with the police as he had been with the hotel staff, though was eventually placed under arrest. According to reports, the 30-year-old is a 5-year veteran of the Chicago Police Department and was on vacation at the time. Unsurprisingly, reports state that he was also drunk. He has since been charged with simple battery and disorderly conduct. Chicago police say that they are now conducting an internal investigation into the officer's alleged actions as well. As the great philosopher Jamie Foxx once said, blame it on the alcohol. Well, that's precisely what one Florida man allegedly tried to do this week, much to the chagrin of unamused police officers. According to reports, the incident began at around 5 p.m. on December 7th, when authorities in Hernando County received multiple calls about a vehicle fire in the parking lot of an apartment complex in the community of Spring Hill. It turned out that the burning vehicle in question was one of the department's own, a marked SUV that had been deliberately set alight. Officers discovered this after the fire had been extinguished, when they found the remnants of a bag of trash which had been wedged under the vehicle's gas tank and had been the obvious source of the flames. Luckily, the alleged culprit, a man named Anthony Thomas Tarduno, spared police the trouble of having to track him down. He reportedly walked right up to them at the scene and confessed. Tarduno explained that a little while earlier he had been drinking at a local bar and had gone out to stretch his legs. When he stumbled across the Hernando County Sheriff's vehicle in the parking lot, he decided he'd like to set it on fire. So, after retrieving a bag of garbage from a nearby dumpster, he did just that, making sure to light the bag and wedge it right under the SUV's gas tank for maximum effect. This was evidently a success, as it not only severely damaged the vehicle, but also another random car that happened to be parked close by. Once the vehicle was up in flames, Tarduno apparently walked back to the bar to keep drinking, though at some point said he felt guilty, so he decided to come back. He attempted to explain his actions by stating that he was intoxicated, and that he, quote, does stupid things when he's drunk. That being said, Tarduno wanted the police to know it was nothing personal. After referring to himself as a, quote, professional arsonist, he said that he didn't target the police SUV for any particular reason, and probably would have set any vehicle on fire that had been parked there. Tarduno was rewarded for his refreshing candor by being arrested on the spot and charged with 2 counts of arson. Before we wrap up, we'd like to take a minute to thank our amazing supporters over on Patreon. As many of you are aware, our situation on YouTube always seems to be a bit uncertain, but our patrons help to ensure that we can continue to make content like this long term without having to worry as much about what surprises might be thrown our way. Plus, patrons also get access to 4 additional stories per week for each of our Crimes of the Week and Crimes of the Week International videos. If you'd like to help support the channel directly, head over to patreon.com/crimezone to join. You can also find that link in the description below. As always, thank you so much for watching, and take care.